Welcome to the Nerdtastic in 3D podcast.
It's Nerdtastic in 3D. Oh, it's Nerdtastic in 3D. Yes, it's Nerdtastic in 3D. It's Nerdtastic
in 3D.
Bong.
Let's stop.
Bong.
There you go.
Are we
Yeah.
bonged?
I think we bonged it up.
It's just not intimate, guys. It's not as intimate.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nerdtastic in 3D, episode number 53. My name is Jason Carter.
I'm Jack Geckler. Cinco tres.
That's good. Tecate. Jason Pecco.
Sponsored by Tecate.
Josh LeBrun.
We're skipping you and Sean.
Well, Sean Fennel.
Sean Kearney.
Adam McFarlane.
And we have two very special guests with us this evening.
And me too.
Oh, Liz.
Liz counts as both.
Liz and Liz.
I am double special.
I am second Liz.
Vincent.
I am Vincent Perea.
Actually, why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell us what you do?
I'm Liz Heron, and I run the research department at Disney Mobile.
The research department.
I know, that's so terrible.
It's good.
Job titles.
I like it.
You are so red right now, by the way.
Oh man! Oh my God!
She's dropping beer. It's getting out of control over
Yeah.
there.
100% recording video on all of this.
Yeah.
So you can't see that color from
I'm Vincent. I'm Vincent Perea, and I'm an artist at Disney Mobes with Jay Spaghetti Pecco and Sean Kearney. Do people call you Spaghetti here? Is that how? It works?
I don't know if anybody knows me.
Oh,
I'm the artist formerly known as Spaghetti.
Oh, you're the artist. Well, I'm just an artist, and your name is Spaghetti. That's pretty funny how it works out.
That's great news.
Yeah, it's good.
It's good to have you guys here.
Thank you.
Does it record?
Good to be here.
Oh, we're
Why
recording.
Are you looking at me like that?
I'm just loving this banter.
So FYI, YouTube viewers and
Cute.
audio listeners.
Wait, was that a fake Foley laugh?
It's like
He was
that
on
was
his
legit.
phone, not even paying attention.
Yeah, you were looking down, and then you just felt like, oh, I'm going to jump in
So
and do fake laugh.
maybe we should start off by talking about something that happened last Sunday.
Were we
Not
here?
the wedding.
The moon launch?
The
Who got
Bloskers?
married?
There was a moon launch?
Someone, a bride, somewhere. The Oscars.
Well, no, talk about the wedding.
Who got
Got
married?
married.
I mean, half of
Give
Nerdtastic
him a
was
shout
there.
out. Yeah,
got
I
married?
was there.
Well,
Jay, you were there. Josh, you
I
were
wasn't
there.
invited.
I don't know what the hell you're talking
Mine
about.
must have been left in the
I don't go to
Dreamworkers,
weddings, so.
Co-workers of at least the half of us normal podcasters, the regulars. None
of us are normal.
And Tyler Saunders got married.
Congratulations,
Sanders?
guys.
And
Saunders?
became the
Yay.
Thompsons. I
The
think
Thompsons?
they're
Did they
going to go
combine
by
them?
I think they're going to go by the Thompsons
think it's the
or
Tanders.
Tonders.
The Tonders.
Tonders. Thaunders.
Nice wedding.
Tonders is the muscle you use when you jump high.
In fact, it was a nice wedding. It was a nice wedding.
It's weird. Without the headphones, it feels like you guys are having a conversation by yourself, and then like everybody
Real
else
quick,
is
let's
doing
just have a let's get it out there in the open. Why don't we have headphones, and why are we all using?
Why is this not a
Why are-
professional
same
show
microphones?
this evening,
Sharing
Josh?
Let's
microphones.
talk about. Let's blame
Is this not
maybe
how it
a
usually is?
car company. Let's blame
No,
a
this
car
doesn't work
company
for
if
us
we
at
had
all.
it. More
to.
intimate.
No, it's a user error.
So Josh, do you want to just throw it out there?
Okay,
Okay, so
tattoos.
I'm getting my car serviced, and it was supposed to be done today, and some of the equipment that we use is in my trunk.
Half
And
the
so-
equipment?
Yeah,
So your
not
car
anymore,
runs
dude.
on headphones.
The equipment is gone.
This isn't the point of this. I want to
Headphones
show
are
of hands in the room, and people please comment on YouTube. When you take your car into said service shop, how many of you leave your electronics in the car when you hand it over overnight?
It's a dealership.
Do you mean like
What is that? How?
I just
And that
consider it
keeps
the
your
tip.
stuff
How does that
safe.
relate?
How?
They don't have the ability to push the button and open the back.
Just a little bit in.
That trunk is secure,
Like a
or
tip,
as the
like
Brits
right.
say, the boot.
Yeah.
Just see how it feels.
Your
Kinda
Yaris is not secure.
All it takes to
So
all
I
it takes to
apologize.
open the trunk of the Yaris is a
I
slight
apologize
breeze.
for not having everything here, but even if I did have everything here, we would still be a little bit short.
We all have headphones though.
Well, yes.
So who here watched the Oscars? Yay or nay?
I actually watched the Oscars.
Yes?
Yeah.
I
I
watched.
watched
it.
the first like 3 things that Seth.
I watched the first 3
McFarlane
hours,
did.
and then the DVR cut off.
Ooh.
So
I
missed
watched.
the last like 4.
3 hours.
That's the
Yeah.
problem.
I
That's
lost,
how-
I
that's
lost
how it
like
works,
the
man.
last 4 awards.
I watched about a grand total of 25 minutes of the Oscars. I came home. I was like out. I came home and it was probably like an hour left. And about 10 minutes into the hour, I was bored out of my mind. And I was flipping through channels. And CNN had a wonderful show on about a guy who was in a minimum security prison. and they had him go to a maximum security prison to go be a double agent and like hook up with this dude who was like a serial killer, and I was like way into it. And it was an hour into that show that I flipped over, and they still hadn't announced a fucking award that I wanted. And then Anne Hathaway won an award, and I was like, blah, and then I fucking gave up.
That sounds like a great experience.
Hey,
Great story.
welcome to my life, motherfucker.
I watched the whole fucking thing, and I had
Boring.
apps, everything. My family was over. It's just kind
You
of
had apps?
We had
Oh,
apps.
appetizers.
We had appetizers.
Not-
yeah,
not,
not
Who's following
applications.
along?
I
You got to be careful. This
was an
is
Oscar
half
app
the
you had
Disney
live.
Mobile crew is in this building.
I know,
right
but
now. So, what do you guys think? Any surprises? Any well-deserved awards?
The guy who
Or
looked
not
like
deserved?
Vigo the Carpathian really surprised me.
You mean
Which
all
dude
of
was
them?
that?
My favorite tweet from the
Well, I
Oscars
think
was
long,
somebody,
white hair and beard.
Yeah,
There were
there
so
was a
many
lot
of
of
them.
Gandalfs.
and somebody
That's
put
how you
on.
do
I thought he was one of the ghosts from The Matrix. the
Somebody
second
put
one.
on Twitter, why do half the people winning awards look like and this is a deep grab here, look like the scientist at Area 51 in Independence Day.
You know that was Brent
Talking
Spiner.
about Brent
No,
Spiner?
That was
Yeah.
Dan.
yeah,
Spiner's
with
like-
long
Yeah.
hair.
Wow.
Long white
Talking
hair.
about deep
You guys don't get out here much. I got that down.
But that was like there was 4 of those guys that all won awards from sound.
And that was
Yeah.
just from Sunday's awards. There was the technology award too, or
And
the
they
technology
probably
all
show
fucking
award.
look like
All
it
had
there.
that, right?
Those awards got to smell. That's got to be a smelly room. The tech awards, right?
Hey man,
I know we got engineers here,
That's
but
the
you
ceremony
know,
that
come
goes
on.
for
I sit
forever.
next to you. Actually,
Used to.
Kind of.
across from you.
No, it was. I don't know. I thought it was a good show. I thought it wasn't as bad as it had been in years past. I thought the James Bond stuff was cool.
Except that weird version of Goldfinger. That was
that was-
weird,
that was
right?
The original singer. She's just old now.
Yeah, but
Somebody
Her
said-
voice sounds a little different.
She was really horrible. I'm like, that was who sang it.
no, I get that, but
just
she's
really-
saying a different version of it because you have to hold that long note. And she would just like cut it off.
she can't.
'Cause
She
she
can't
can't
hold
do
it
it
right.
anymore.
She's just
She
80.
can't do it
Well, she
anymore.
couldn't hold it in the
She's
original
just a
version
grandma.
either, but she did it anyway. Like,
Science
She
factor.
did.
That's true.
anyway,
I was
That
just
was weird.
bored. Like, and
you're
they're,
watching a
like,
prison documentary.
yeah, but then that was really good. But the thing is like they're just boring as shit. And then they like try to cut off. I feel like they cut off everybody so soon
Yeah.
who wasn't an actor.
Yeah, that's
And like
true.
I
Yeah,
get
that's
that
super fucked
to
up.
a degree. But like to be quite honest, like the what's his face from Life of Pi,
Yeah.
not a great speaker.
No.
Whereas
Ang
a
Lee,
couple
yeah.
of the guys who won for less
kinda
important
racist.
below the line awards, like
Were the guys who
had
did the
more important
effects
things
for
to
Life
say.
of Pi, and like that
Oh,
would
yeah,
have
that
been
was
a
a big
lot
thing.
more
That was
interesting
that was
to hear
bullshit.
from.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
that
didn't
was
say
bullshit.
a word about rhythm and
Didn't-
hues.
Well, he
Yeah,
was
I
about
didn't
to, and
think
they
that.
cut him off.
They cut
No,
him
Ang
off
Lee
right
didn't
at
think.
rhythm.
Ang Lee
Didn't say
didn't.
Ang
anything
Lee
about them.
didn't
Yeah.
say a word about rhythm and hues.
But he was allowed to
But
go
it's
on and thank
crazy
his
because,
agent and
that
all
Life
that
of Pi movie
bullshit.
was really about the acting and like the hard performances
Tiger did a
by
really
the
great
fake tiger
performance,
Yeah.
and
so.
the fake
Did
fish
you guys
and the
Exactly.
fake
Did you guys
sun.
see? It was on Imgur, I think, and it was like if Life of Pi was done with a puppet, and it was like a Calvin and Hobbes looking Hobbes guy. If Life of Pi was done with
a real
real tiger, the guy was eaten alive and it was all bloody all over the place. But because it was done with VFX, it was like this like perfect combination of stuff.
Well, my favorite thing is they kept showing all those photos of like, oh, this is what this scene would have looked like. Like it's spread across the internet, like this crazy meme of, oh, this is what it would look like when he was like caressing the tiger, and he's basically holding one of those like weird sex wedges that like has like a tiger's face on it. And it was super hilarious. Like I kind of wish the whole movie was like that. Like,
Hey,
it's weird
by the way, we're changing the name of this podcast to Sex Wedge.
sex wedge,
Yeah.
sex wedge in 3D.
3D.
They're coming on after
In
Nerdtastic.
3D.
I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I'm.
They've got the 11:30
We all know what I'm
slot.
talking about.
But it was
We
like
do.
the like I have to say, and like the last like 3 years have been very boring for me. But I think like they've gotten rid of a lot of the musical performances of the songs that actually are nominated, and then they did the weird
Thank God.
musical thing where they did
I didn't quite get that,
songs
yeah.
from musicals, but they were only like 3 years old. So I was like, yeah, I remember when when fat Jennifer Hudson sang the song "Skinny Jennifer Hudson" singing. Like everything
But
was
she had
just
so much
very
heart in
the
that
same.
performance.
It was like,
I know.
oh, I get
It was
it.
it was the producers of Chicago. Was that
Yeah.
who did it?
Yeah,
I think that's
Chicago.
Yeah, no, it was.
They did the Chicago.
The performance-
No, but
It was
like,
like-
no, I thought the producers
they,
of
like,
Chicago
put
did
it
the
all
whole
together.
show.
Oh,
Did
they
the
did?
whole show.
So like,
And it was a
oh,
tribute
it
to
worked this last
musicals.
time. So we'll,
Yeah.
But why?
Yeah,
Like
that's
this
weird.
wasn't a big year for musicals. You had Les Mis, and that
But they
was-
just pick a thing, I think, every
know.
year. And this year it was like James Bond and musicals.
Just get the
And
fucking
then the
awards.
best, though, was that it was also a tribute to the music in movies. So they played the Jurassic Park theme song about 5 times.
Did you just
and
like
that was
shit
the
your
highlight.
pants?
I was like, oh,
You
this
flip
is
back
perfect.
every time. And it was
Jurassic Park. That's why they would have.
Freaking like.
And they did an impromptu times, like during the in memoriam part.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it was weird.
So you guys are all Disney, so you stoked Brave one? Deserving?
I thought
No,
Not at all.
not at all. Actually,
Because that piece of shit should not have won. It's fucking cool. And I have friends who worked on it. God bless your animation. That was good. It's just not a good movie. To watch.
Yeah, Brave was so beautiful, and like I felt like, you know, I mean, Pixar it's always up there, and I feel like so many people were just like, oh, it's a Pixar movie, so that's what's going to win.
That, yeah.
But Wreck-It Ralph was so much more original and
It's a
interesting.
better film.
As a better
Absolutely,
film.
Yeah.
And I kind of also felt that way about in the shorts category. There was the Paperman, which was an amazing technical marvel. But there was this short called Adam and Dog that was so good. And it wasn't like a technical achievement because it was like a 2D anime. It was very traditional. But the storytelling in that made Paperman kind of look like Babytown Heights a little bit. Like, Paperman was very charming and, you know, it was about like this love story. But Adam and Dog is like so subtle and gorgeous. I just felt like I was really rooting for that one. Even though I knew Paperman would win because Paperman's amazing, you know.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. I felt like with the animation this year,
Yeah,
it
what
felt
are they-
like no one knew what the hell to do,
Yeah.
you know.
And do they look at the story, or are they looking at like?
They don't
the
ever know what to
techniques?
do with animation.
Yeah, I mean, it was just
They
like,
don't know
oh,
what
it's
to do with
Pixar,
anything.
fucking Brave.
What are some of the people who vote on these?
Yeah, no, they're the people
whole
who vote on them.
category
Were just like,
does-
oh,
who does
you-
vote on them?
Very
really
old
understand,
people
like,
and
the-
actors who have won in the
What
I used to do
happened?
this for
Anyone
I
who's
used
one of the
to
best.
run an
Yeah.
awards campaign
Wizard
for
of
a studio,
Oz.
and it's
Yeah.
It's like the
old,
last.
It's
old
the first thing
actors,
they ever voted
and
on
you know,
was
it's like
Wizard of Oz.
some of them
Like,
are
that
younger.
hair
but-
looks really realistic. Vote for
So-
that.
They don't know that. They
I
don't
mean,
watch it. Most
what-
of them don't
Oh, really?
watch those. No.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it
you
was
can
just
send
like,
out screeners and stuff, but who the hell knows?
yeah, exactly. I mean, Brave, like, you know, I that category had like so much going for it. It had like Wreck-It Ralph, and then like Frankenweenie was pretty interesting. Like, I thought almost everyone else was better than Brave in terms of like storytelling, because I feel like you can't really compare. Like, it used to be like Pixar's movies were like the best storytelling and the best looking, and so it's like, you know, how do you really compare a movie when it's like so much of it is so much better? But now I feel like they were such an even playing field.
Yeah, it's almost like they just like felt like, oh, Pixar made a movie, so they
That
need
must
to
be
get
it.
the.
Pixar
So I
earned
think
it
the
with
one
their
thing you
last
have
4
to,
movies,
you truthfully have to give Brave is that it looked gorgeous. It was
Yeah.
one of the best looking, from a cinematographic standpoint, films I think Pixar's done. I really do believe that. I mean, the depth of field was painted really beautifully. The seamless, because they have Pixar's two DPs. They have a DP for lighting and a DP for layout, and those two I think worked so seamlessly together, better than any other film I've seen. Now that being said, it just wasn't nearly as entertaining all around for me as Wreck-It Ralph was. I just think it was a more complete, better film.
Like you,
But
And the real thing is, my kids hated it, so that's the truth.
Yeah.
But
What
I do think there's one thing that you have to say is we're all gamers. We've all talked about that in the podcast. We bring to the Wreck-It Ralph a certain enthusiasm. Or
Yeah,
a
that's
certain,
true.
maybe a better
That's
word is
100%
a
true.
certain familiarity with some of the subject matter.
Yeah.
Where if it's true that the Academy is composed mostly of old people, they may not. I mean, I'm not saying everybody is, but let's say that
No, but the
there's a
demographic
chunk.
skews much older.
So
in the
there may
Academy.
be a familiarity with the content that's not there, where that resonates very close to home for all of us.
Yeah.
I don't think we brought it up when Wreck-It Ralph came out. Like, I don't think we really even touched on it. Like, the fact that, like, that scene when they had all the different game characters and, like, specifically, I remember, like, distinctly the scene when Metal Gear Solid gets in the box and, like, the exclamation comes out, and it was just, like, I lost it in the theater. I was watching the ArcLight, and I literally was like laughing out loud, like when the cardboard box comes up, and I'm like,
I'll get that that's lost on the old people. I get that, but that's not what they're voting for.
Still
They're
doesn't make
voting
it a
for
good
it's Pixar.
story.
No,
They're
but I
voting
do
on it's
think
a
it was
Pixar.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you're not
Hey,
gonna
that
watch
Pixar
them,
Kool-Aid
then they're
tastes
going,
good.
Yeah, if you're not actually watching the films, you're just gonna vote because it's a Pixar film. You're gonna say, all right, I know that's probably good, so we'll
Exactly.
just
I will say-
Exactly.
I don't understand how they could vote for that movie after all those things Mel Gibson said when he was drunk. Like, that was just so mean. Like, I know he did a great job, and
I
William
think you mean
Wallace is a
that's
wonder-
Braveheart. Braveheart.
Oh, what the
Well,
fuck is this
defend.
movie about?
Some girl with red
love
hair.
that
Oh,
movie.
I didn't see that shit.
Love that.
Yeah, that
movie.
movie's
You
great.
can say whatever you want.
Vincent,
But I was going to say that I feel like with animated movies, you know, for the longest while, I mean, probably for the last like 8 to 10 years, you know, one of the things that's always added into someone's criticism of the movie in terms of a positive thing is like, oh my God, it looks so beautiful, right? And now I feel like, just like I feel the same way with games, that like, I feel like that should kind of go out the window at this point because, of course, like an animated movie can look amazing. Like, DreamWorks makes incredible animated movies now that look gorgeous. Like, some of my favorite animated movies come out of DreamWorks now. And then so does Pixar, whereas, like, when Pixar first started, they were the only ones who were doing stuff nearly at that level of visual quality. So I feel like that, like, oh, it's beautiful, doesn't get any credit with me anymore. Now it's like, now your art form is, like, up to par, so now what are you going to do with it? Like, with games, too, it's like, you can take a team of, like, 100 dudes and over 2 years make a gorgeous-looking game. Like, that's a given, So I think that now that category especially needs to be judged on that parameter of, like, now what do you do with it? Because the technology is caught up.
It's a tough thing because the Oscars is built upon categories, right? So for feature films, you can judge individual films in individual categories for their craft in that area. Whereas animation in the Oscars is just, it's like the best picture, right? It's like there's no, you can't, like for me personally, if it was up to cinematography, I probably would have given the award to Brave in an animated film.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Whereas overall, best picture, I would have given it to Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
But I want to bring up a story which has kind of floated a little bit around the industry, but not a ton, which is actually in result to Paperman, which you mentioned, which won Best Animated Short. So the producer, Christina Reed, once when Paperman was announced, was on the balcony and threw paper airplanes off of the balcony into the audience and was kicked out of the Oscars for 10 minutes until they realized she was supposed to be on stage winning that very award.
Really?
That's crazy.
Why wasn't she on stage winning the award?
Because she got kicked out.
She threw four
she
paper
was,
airplanes.
but she was up in the balcony. She wasn't going to be on stage, but she was one of the team.
Yeah,
she wasn't one of the.
She was just like
doing
like a
she didn't get to go on stage because she was kicked out of the Oscars.
I heard it was because
that sucks.
Yeah, that she was up in the balcony. She wasn't going to be the people accepting it, and so she did it as like an act of like, yay, like
it was, but no, she was.
Act.
It was kind of like going to be a thing where they throw everything off until it.
That's very cute.
That is
and also, I want to say too, I don't want it to sound like I didn't like Paperman because I thought Paperman was awesome, but like I had such a visceral response to Adam and Dog because I have a dog.
4 Twitter followers.
I lost.
I have a question.
They're all spam bots anyway. Doesn't matter.
So
they're pissed.
If technical, I don't know what the right word is, but if basically how good an animated film looks is not something to judge it upon, then why isn't an animated film judged in the other categories? Because if you think about it, like I know Avengers wasn't up for anything more than effects, but like a lot of that movie was all animation and effects.
Yeah, that could have been an animated movie.
Right, exactly.
To date, there have been two, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 animated films that have been up for Best Picture against live action.
It was Beauty and the Beast, and then
Toy
Story
3. Yeah.
So
wasn't Snow White nominated for Best
Well,
they got a special Oscar.
Snow White won.
Lion King was too.
I think Lion King was picked
little
for,
ones.
well, not picked, but it was nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
So they do the crossovers just in very rare.
I think it's rare, and I think
very rare.
Pixar, from what I understand, had to spend a lot of money and
Blew a lot.
And it was part of the
fucking.
But it was also
money.
Blowjobs.
It was part of the fact that there's 10 nominees.
Money blowjobs, not
now that
actual
there's 10
blowjobs.
nominees, it opens the door for that
anything
a lot easier.
blowjob.
Like Toy Story 3 was nominated the first year that they had 10 nominees.
But is that like a normal thing? 10
No,
nominees?
it used to be 5.
Okay.
And now it's kind of crazy because now there's so many movies that can be nominated.
They could do up to 10.
They could do up to 10. So it's kind of crazy.
So
I wish more would, but the Oscars are such a weird thing in terms of what they judge things on. I mean, they gave it to Shakespeare in Love. For God's
What do
sake.
you guys think of the choices for Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor?
I was really.
I liked it.
I
Yeah.
think Leonardo
liked it.
DiCaprio
I
should
think
have
those-
won.
Yeah,
Really?
he was great in that.
He wasn't up.
He wasn't.
Okay.
I thought
enough for
But he should have
Django.
for
I didn't see that movie.
for Titanic.
For Titanic.
he should have won. He should have won for What's Eating Gilbert Grape. He should just act like the guy from What's Eating Gilbert Grape in every movie.
You know what they need to do, and I don't know
My
if
shooter
this is a
fell off.
law or it should be a law, that they should let you nominate a movie for Best Picture again when it gets re-released in the year that it gets re-released, and then I would
Jurassic
start
Park will get
campaigning right now. Jurassic
Oh,
Park.
boy.
for
The
Best
campaign
Picture.
begins.
But
Jurassic
there's
Park
so many.
3D.
Die Hard was re-released this year. They re-released the original. In
By the
selected
way,
theaters.
the last Die Hard 5.
Was it?
Terrible.
What was the
It's okay. Me
title
and Sean
again?
saw it.
Die Hard.
It's a good
That's
day to
a
die
whole nother
hard.
story.
Yippee-ki-yay, Mother Russia.
Mother Russia. Oh, that's the best.
It
That's the best.
It was
Who was
mind
the-
blowing.
the actor?
That's the other one that I've heard
I
on TV.
forgot.
Bruce
Best
Willis.
actor?
Bruce Willis.
Best actor.
Bruce Willis was still in it.
Not what he's asking.
Okay.
Who was the actor in Die
No,
Hard?
they're asking. Oh,
Oh God.
man down.
Bruce Willis was still in Die Hard.
Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm asking about Daniel Day-Lewis. I was wondering who was.
Wondering when Adam was going to get that.
Oh, Daniel Day-Lewis
Who
won
was the
Best
actor? We literally were talking about Die Hard.
Do you think that he
Logical
was?
jump.
I mean,
I do.
like his method. Is
Do I think he
crazy.
was Lincoln?
Did you confuse him with Abraham Lincoln?
I do. I
But
do.
does everybody feel like he deserved the best actor?
Who was he up against?
100%.
again?
Yeah.
Well, me and Jason saw it. I don't know who else saw it.
I saw
He-
it.
I did.
he-
I saw
think
about
I
he-
saw it
45
twice.
minutes of it.
I loved it.
I mean, that
He was
guy.
committed.
It felt
Yeah.
so.
But he's committed on every role, right?
My problem this year with the Oscars was it felt so expected. Like there was no like big surprises in terms of
Yeah.
that category because now I think there's something like 9,000 award shows that lead up to it, so you kind of know what's going to happen. But I'm glad a guy like
thing is the same group votes on almost all of them.
exactly.
Except for Best Kiss at the MTV Movie Awards.
Yeah, that
which
one's
I
a
think
wild
Lincoln
card.
is up for. I think Lincoln
That'd
is
be
up
pretty
for
good.
Best Kiss.
Lincoln and Frederick Douglass.
So for
Best
me,
Kiss. I didn't see the full movie.
for me, the
It happened. It happened.
By the way, I was wrong about Lion King. It was not nominated.
I knew you were wrong. I didn't want to see
It
it.
felt right though.
Correct. I want to say that for Correction Corner next week.
So for me, the biggest surprise for the Oscars this year was actually in the nominations, and this is why I brought up the Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, is because for me, there were two absolutely amazing, like best of the last decade performances this last year. One was clearly Best Leading Actor, which was Daniel Day-Lewis and Lincoln, and the second is I thought would have been up for Best Actor as well, which was Christoph Waltz in
Yeah.
Django.
Yeah, he carried that
He really
entire
did.
movie.
Well, but I
Yeah.
think you could easily
Jay.
argue that he was a lead actor in that film.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think there's enough gray area, and this is where the politics of award stuff comes in. Is you all knew from the get go that Daniel Day-Lewis was going to win.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
an amazing
So
performance.
the studio makes a calculated decision not to put him up. for
Right.
that,
So
not
then
to
they say,
campaign for him.
okay, you can't win against Daniel Day-Lewis,
What can
but
you
we
win?
can guarantee you the Oscar if you go supporting.
Yeah.
Is what I think probably happened.
is
in
it-
the
I-
awards.
I-
That's
I-
what
I-
happens in those meetings.
I'm pretty sure that's what. No, there's not rules.
Johnny?
I mean, it's just like I think that's a really good way of looking at it because both those actors are such a treat to watch. Like Daniel Day-Lewis is like the ultimate artist. Like he's the kind of guy like you want to be because he just like cares more about the work than he cares about himself, or he cares more about what you think about him. Because when you watch him, he doesn't want you to think about I'm Daniel Day-Lewis. And a lot of actors and actresses wouldn't feel that way.
Vin Diesel.
Yeah, there's not a lot of vanity.
And Vin Diesel. Vin
He
Diesel.
definitely-
You know,
yeah, he gets into the
Vin
role.
Diesel in Pitch Black. Or was he Triple X? I don't know.
He was both.
He was both. Was he
was
Triple
both.
X?
Here's
when
the-
I'm watching
look
him,
at
I
the
don't think,
range
wow,
of
that's
that
Vin
guy.
Diesel.
Yeah. And then Christoph
who
Waltz,
the
I
hell
feel
is that
like
guy?
he's just so much fun to watch, and like the rest of that movie for me wasn't as good as him. You know, like I enjoyed the movie, but when I know Peck hasn't seen it, so it's a little bit of a spoiler.
Yeah, let's not.
But he's
Black
not
people
in
are
a he's
slaves.
not in a big portion of the movie, and it's not great.
So this is my curiosity about him, though, is he's very entertaining to watch because of his demeanor
Yeah.
in his roles, which we've seen two of his roles, and they actually have very similar demeanor. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious how far his
Two-trick
acting
pony?
is
Is he
gonna
actually?
stretch.
Yeah. What's
Yeah.
his range?
Yeah.
That's-
I think my problem with the Oscars right now is all these actors are so annoying in person.
Anne
like
Hathaway.
they're like
Yeah, like
she's
Anne
the
Hathaway seems
epitome
super
of
annoying.
annoying people. Like I was watching it and I just wanted her to lose. And I hear she's a nice person. And there's this really weird.
I've heard
No,
the
she's
reverse.
terrible.
But
Yeah, you
there's
guys see the
there's
cut of
like
her
a-
doing the
Hathaway.
breathing.
But there's like a whole like backlash right now to like people hating Anne Hathaway. That's like she's really
It's
a
deserved.
feminist. Da da da. We shouldn't hate her. And it's like no, she's annoying as shit. And I don't care if she's a man or a woman. Like there are annoying men too. But I just feel like it was just like everybody I watched that won an award, like either was getting booted off really fast because they were part of like the not important categories, or was just like, ugh. Like when she walked up, she said something like, it did come true. And I was like,
Shut up.
I really wanted
see-
something to just fall down and
But
hit
see,
her.
then you have Best Picture. Clooney gets up and is so fucking cool.
He doesn't
Stands
say
off to the
anything.
side and doesn't say shit.
Doesn't say nothing.
Yeah.
Grabs his trophy and just fucking
He's like,
smiles.
"Yeah,
pretty
Well,
wide.
he knows
I like
he
the
knows
fact
he's
that-
getting late anyway, so it doesn't
That's
matter.
amazing.
He's like, I'll be back. I'll get
That's
another
amazing.
one of
He
these.
doesn't have to do shit.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Yeah, it's
He's
true.
like, I thought that was really cool.
That was
I
really
One
cool.
thing, the one thing I gotta say is if I'm gonna watch like actors just blow each other on screen, like I'm gonna find it online where they put a little bit more into it. Like that's my point. Is like why watch the Oscars?
We went right to it.
I'm
So,
glad.
I mean, we're
It's
set
funny
to go.
because
He
it's
had that side
actors
up, man.
accepting
Like-
awards about being actors.
Like
and
you guys are
acting
actors.
while
You
accepting
get
the
paid
award.
an enormous amount of money to do minimal amount of work. Fuck all of you.
Especially
I
at
love
that
movies.
level.
I
Yeah,
absolutely love movies, and I will
Well,
continue to pay to see them.
one thing I'm really glad they stopped doing, and they did it last because I watch every Oscars award season because that's what I do with my mom. Is the last 2 award seasons, what they've done is they've blown through all the other categories, and when they get to the best actor, they spend 20 minutes describe and the person presenting the award will go, Meryl, you were so brave in this role, and we'll have like a 5-minute thing just about this one actor, and then move on to the other one, and they'll draw it out and aggrandize these people who, like to Sean's point, Kearney, will make so much money, just completely aggrandize them, and it just felt so
They play
gross.
the smallest part in the movie making.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
hundreds and
Yeah.
hundreds of people that that have to do their job well in order for them to look good.
Yeah.
And that just felt like the grossest thing. For years, I've watched the Oscars since I was a kid because, like I said, that's what my family does. And people would say, "Oh, it's so fake and bullshit," and I never felt that way until they did that.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What are you doing? You're just feeding right into what everyone hates about this."
And
Yeah,
then
just the most
Jaws
visible parts of it.
Yeah.
that was
song
really
was
weird.
like the
That
worst.
made it
Like it
worse.
was like really like now when people talk a little bit too much, you're gonna.
Now, don't get me wrong. Being somebody who's done visual effects, somebody who's actually worked at that studio,
Yeah.
and every year I've watched it. Now, in my case, this is what I do for a living, so I'm into it for another reason. But what gets me is not one of those VFX soups ever up front thank the artist who did the work for them. I know very few VFX soups who even do one shot on a film.
Well, they don't. They also don't get the chance, right? I mean, it's like.
It depends the studio.
Yeah.
They can do stuff if
Yeah.
they want to do stuff.
Yeah, but it's also.
But I mean, in that moment, you don't have a chance.
No,
to,
sure.
actually
But
thank-
the first people they should be thanking are everybody who did their who
and-
basically.
Yeah, like the hundreds of
Ang
people
Lee
that
shouldn't be
rotoscoped
thanking
out
his agent.
fucking
He should
Iron
be
Man's
thanking-
armor or something.
But a
Yeah.
VFX soup knows
Yeah.
better. That's every VFX soup I know. They know better.
Yeah.
And I
They
think
know better.
The big thing with it too is that these guys will get up there and they won't let the people that are below the line. They won't let them say a lot.
Yeah.
But they do. Oh well, because we want to keep this thing flowing. We want to keep it entertaining. But yet every year it's longer and more boring. And it's like, well, so what are you doing? Because for a while they were doing it where they wouldn't even let people below the line walk up to the stage.
Well, that
They'd
one year they
accept
had
the
to
award
stand
by
there.
their
Yeah,
chairs,
that was terrible.
and yet it
That was
still
a
was
bad year.
the third longest Oscars in history. And so it's like I don't know what they're doing from year to year, but they're literally continuing to drop the ball and making them longer and more boring. And everyone just makes the joke this is really long. And it's
Ad
but
revenue,
all they're
man.
doing is cutting everybody who works on movies down and going well, why don't we spend a half an hour talking about Anne Hathaway? And it's just
Yeah, the
like,
Oscars are like that friend of yours that will always complaining about their problems and then complain about their problems for an
Yeah.
hour and a half. They always poke fun at themselves and it's never cute because they're just gonna do
You're like,
exactly
no, you
what
need
they
help.
They
It's
should
like
just
stop
do what the
making fun of how you
VGAs
drink too
do and
much.
just put more boobs on screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that?
They had the song.
Yeah, and they should
Oh,
show
that's true, they
the
did
next
have the
David
sign. There
Cage
was no
game or
picture.
whatever.
should do something.
Seth, you know what's
Where was
funny
when we saw
though?
your
Like,
nuts song?
I just
What
feel
was
like
that
games
song?
need to grow up, guys.
as commercial as Seth was, and his portrayal as the host of the show, he had a couple one-liners that I'm sure went over most of Middle America's heads that I lost my shit about, even down to the Meryl Streep. She needs no introduction, and he just fucking bolted.
That was
And
awesome.
I'm watching. I'm
That was
like,
fine.
I'm laughing my ass off. Nobody in the crowd was really laughing. I'm like, really, guys? See, that's funny. That's
Yeah,
some
yeah.
funny
Yeah,
shit.
that was a good
And then
one.
Josh, what was the other one, dude? The
Lincoln one.
The
Lincoln
one
joke
was
about-
great.
Yeah, that was really funny.
We were
And
just
he's
talking
really
about
too
that.
soon.
Yeah.
150 years.
Humorless
He stole
asshole.
that
joke.
Because I got some
He
Napoleon
stole
jokes
that
coming
joke
on
from
later.
a
You can
stand-up
comment on
comic.
those.
Oh, did he?
did.
Totally stole that joke from a stand-up comic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But still, the fact that everybody react with aghast, it's
And
I'm sure that he had 6 9/11
it's
jokes.
okay
He was
because it's a
fuck.
joke.
But that joke sounded like something that any one of us could have come up with.
Absolutely.
Because it's
Someone
about
already
Abraham
did.
Lincoln.
Yeah, my problem was the reaction that people had. Was
No, and that's
so over the top.
No, I
and that's not the part that gets me. The part is after when he just throws back out. He's like, seriously, 100.
Too soon.
It's been a
soon.
while.
And then he goes into the Napoleon thing. That's the part that gets me. That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Not
It was
the
good.
not the initial setup. But yeah, what are you gonna do?
It's funny too because he was making fun of the fact that Oscar hosts always get mixed reviews and they always get terrible reviews. No one's ever happy with it, and it's then what are we doing? Why are we having this thing?
Billy
every year?
Crystal. Billy Crystal's the golden.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
golden
oh yeah,
Power
but when
Ranger.
Billy
He's the
Crystal
only
came
one.
back, he was
He's
terrible.
done 9.
Yeah,
Yeah, but Billy Crystal last time didn't the same.
Did any of
He
you
was
guys-
like-
Twice.
Yeah, I like Hugh
He
Jackman.
was awesome.
Did any of you guys go on IMDb during it?
No.
They had like up to the second awards on there. Like I went to like
oh.
Ang Lee to see what other movies he directed, and like
Yeah,
it was like as soon as they announced him, it was like 2 seconds ago, 3 seconons ago, 4 seconds ago, and it was just like up to
That's
the date.
crazy,
As
yeah.
soon as it
Shit.
happened, they were updating us. Really interesting to me.
Somebody didn't have a Sunday off. or fucking
Poor dude.
IMDb intern.
It's like fucking.
It's the busiest day of the year for them. What are you talking about?
I have a friend who works for Entertainment Tonight, and I remember we were supposed to go
Brag
out once, and
much?
she was like, "Yeah, that's a rough one." But we were supposed to go out once, and she's like, "I can't go out anymore. Whitney Houston died," and it was like she fucking was like called in because it happened like on a Saturday night. And she's like, "God fucking damn it! Like this is what I have
She's
to
ruined
spend
my
night."
weekend.
Yeah, it's
So
like,
terrible.
This
fuck,
chick has to go and die. Now my life is over.
Oh
Thanks.
God!
And that's the
Take out
thing.
Chinese again.
when you're somebody like Whitney Houston, you don't think of that when
selfish.
you're taking that third
Whitney
fucking
Houston.
bump of cocaine.
I was selfish of her.
Yeah, you don't think that there's some poor Entertainment Tonight intern that's got to work over the
it's
weekend.
so great.
Oh,
That's the
man.
best.
Rough.
Ruining lives.
Think about it, Whitney.
Starting with the room.
Next time.
Next time.
Selfish.
Yeah.
Next time you decide to kill yourself.
Yeah, who's the next one that's on the list? Think about it, Lohan. Like, come on. There's other people.
The world won't stop for her.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
No.
we're keep. Yeah.
Entertainment Tonight.
are you
will,
kidding
though.
me?
Have you seen
Oh,
that?
Oh,
thing?
Entertainment
man.
Tonight.
They'll fucking stop for anything.
So Jack, do you want to talk about?
Well, so still speaking of the Oscars, what maybe a lot of people who aren't in our specific industry or live in LA wouldn't have known is that a large group of visual effects artists were protesting outside the Oscars.
But
Basically preaching about the state of our industry, mass layoffs between Rhythm, DreamWorks, the jobs in the Los Angeles area and just the United States in general, how many are going out the door to the foreign markets. Mm-hmm. So it was even more fitting, everything that went down at the Oscars with Rhythm winning and then not getting any credit, getting cut off by the theme song of Jaws, and actually cut his mic, which was, he was one of the
That
few
was
that
really
they actually
rude.
cut the mic on, which was kind of shitty. What was interesting is after the fact, a friend of mine brought up, he had heard from people down there on the street, the cops, and this is something to keep in mind for people who want to support us, the cops who were standing with 10 feet of them, wrangling them or whatever, had no idea what the hell the acronym VFX means. My parents have no idea. Seriously, if you said VFX, what exactly?
Wow.
So try to visual effects. And it just sort of, it's this, to me, it just sort of lends a state of how little people know. So if you're on Facebook and you see all the green screen, everybody's changed their profile pictures and are talking about it, it's trying to make some kind of change in our industry, whether or not they try to unionize again, which they've been trying to do as long as I've been in the industry, or whatever they do. It's just trying to get the notoriety out that we drive the films. The biggest money makers in Hollywood now are driven by visual effects, period.
Yeah.
And I
Try
think
to
people
watch an
realize-
entire movie without the visual effects.
And not
Just from
even just the
beginning to end.
biggest moneymaker. There's not a movie made in Hollywood today. Period.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, I
Any
think people
movie.
realize that
Yeah,
they're a big
even a
part, but they don't
documentary.
realize
You take
how
the
big.
visual effects away, and Life of Pi turns into just pie.
Yeah.
But I'm
The
going. I'm going
Avengers.
even-
I mean,
good
that's
kind
not
of
even.
pie.
Yeah.
But
Not even the good kind.
I'm trying to point out even
3.14.
more minute that people
No,
seem
like
to forget.
Apple
But every single film out there
Something like that.
nowadays, period, every film, even down to the college student, is color corrected. That's visual effects. And people seem to think that no, unless it's a Marvel film or Life of Pi or something like Transformers, well, that doesn't have visual effects. Every single film that was shown at the Oscars had visual effects. Every single one.
I was gonna say, I remember back, kind of when I think it was HDDV first came out and Blu-ray first came out. I watched 300 where they had the version you could watch without anything.
Really? That's
You could legitimately watch the entire film, like without any effects. No, but I'm saying without any visual effects at all.
Oh,
And so
'cause
you're
you
sitting
can,
there.
Yeah, actually, Adam, you can watch any movie without any visuals if you just turn off your TV but turn up the speakers. That's every movie.
But
that
no,
has-
so
that has
like,
sound
but like,
effects.
like to
No,
just
sound
to just prove a point, though, like you literally could watch this movie and go like, okay, so literally all I'm seeing is a bunch of guys in capes and cloths run around,
You could
and
use
you
side by
realize
side, yeah.
how much they go into, like how much visual effects did to add to that movie. And so for like, other than I think Lord of the Rings, which would have been the best special features movies I've seen, it just added this huge depth into what visual effects are doing for movies. And it's now knowing more about the industry, and I have got a much keener eye. But like that was one of those first films that I watched, and I was like, holy shit.
So I actually have a question, because I don't know a ton about it because I don't come from visual effects. But like I feel like I originally came from like an illustration background, and I know that like there's a big problem in that industry, like editorial illustration, book illustration, where the rates for illustration have flatlined basically since Norman Rockwell. Like what Norman Rockwell made for a cover illustration, illustrators make the exact same amount, not the inflated amount, the exact same amount, and that's super fucked up. Like that's nothing. And so I wonder if a similar, and there's a big problem where like so many illustrators are flooding the market that like now, like if I wanted a job, I would have to take a job for way less. Like I could underbid an illustrator for a job. And I'm wondering like if that is kind of a correlation issue with visual effects, or like what is the core issue with
No, the core issue is the outsource. It's actually the opposite. I would make an argument that a lot of visual effects artists who currently work are compensated pretty well for what we do. There's probably some who would argue with me, but I'd say relative to other jobs, we're compensated pretty well. The issue is that the studios want to keep making these blockbusters for less and less, so that's where the less and less comes in. And other countries are offering, and let's go even further than this, even outside of LA, states are offering so many subsidies to get the work that it doesn't behoove them to keep the visual effects work here, because the states and the countries are saying, we'll give you the subsidies, but the work has to be done here. So if you shoot here, you have to do the visual effects here, and now we'll give you the subsidies, which can be upwards of 30%.
And I know LA is like brutal in terms of like
but
all the
thing with that too is the incentives get the studio gets that. The visual effects studios do not get it. So it doesn't, you can sit there and
down to
them. Exactly. So even if it was done here, as opposed to being even done in like Scotland or something like that, it's like this visual effects house here still has to, pay, their employees. They don't get like that extra money. So.
Yeah.
Well, they can pay them less, and it's why we have sister studios. It's why the studio we're in right now has an India studio. It's why DreamWorks, where we all work, has a sister studio.
Yeah.
It's the only way to stay competitive on our end is to say we're going to source a certain percentage of our work out to them to do, or maybe a whole feature to say, hey, you're going to do this. We'll have a couple supervisors. As a matter of fact, Rhythm, who filed bankruptcy, they were one of the leaders in that. They were the first one I knew of that had an India studio. I worked on Golden Compass with them, and it backfired a lot. A lot of work that got sent back we had to redo, and I wondered how that business model worked. But they did it. What I was told later on is they did enough work to keep our margins okay, because at the end of the day, dude, the business model for visual effects is horrible. There's nobody in the industry who has either owned a studio or is pretending to get ready to own a studio that will tell you that it is a good business to get on, because the margins are so fine for feature film. Commercials, it's amazing. Car companies spend a shitload. Any commercial you see, there's money to be made there. The feature film market, the margins are so fine that studios mostly will do them to just get notoriety, to get commercials. Because almost all the visual effects companies have commercial divisions to keep them afloat.
The word on Twitter that I read, and this may or may not be true,
150
was
characters or less.
I'm not sure if you can fit it all.
Is that
there,
there's
but-
this pill that can make your erections last for 8 hours?
You got that too?
No, that was a different tweet I was
They call it an optical ink.
Yeah.
Vincent,
well, the question I just had was that I read that the reason that Rhythm and Hughes went under was because they didn't pay them. The Life of Pi thing never, they didn't get all the money they were supposed to for Life of Pi.
And that happens a lot.
That happens a lot.
Well, I think the problem is that they didn't know who to write the check to, because Ang Lee had never said any of their names before. So they didn't know. They were like, who the fuck do we write this check? I want to write it to someone.
Let's keep it.
So they just wrote it out to Cash. Somebody else, and they kept it.
So the analogy of the illustration that you can underbid an illustrator, I think it's close, but I think the differences that you're seeing is that there's a quality level. Like, I would imagine it's similar with illustration that there's a certain quality level that if you want this upper echelon of quality, you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I think the difference there is that people are in illustration are, hey, either I don't know the difference between top quality or not, or I'm fine with this 80% quality.
Yeah.
I don't think that same logic applies to I think a film instantly loses credibility and mass acceptability if the visual effects suck.
Yeah, totally.
But
yeah, it's and that's why I was trying to like figure out, because I've been wondering about the issue a lot, because I know like in the industries that I've come from, like they have their own problems in terms of like not getting paid or not getting compensated well enough. I mean, I worked in graphic design as well, and there was a huge problem where like you'd work for an agency and like we would pitch a company like the company I'm with now, Disney, and you'd pitch them for a website, and then 7 other agencies would pitch them, and then at the end of the day they would pick one and then take someone else's work.
Because all this stuff at the time used to be a specialty.
Yeah.
Okay? So you had so many people that, it was a core small group of people that did this, and they did it well.
Yeah.
And so they were worth the money. Nowadays, animators are a dime a dozen. Good animators, it's few and far, but you have much bigger of a selection. So you can get outbidded, not even by outsource, but by a student who actually is very talented.
Yeah.
But he's able to learn at a younger age, as opposed to back in the day, which was a job that you learned, or it was a skill that you learned on the job. And so a lot of problems that happens as well. It's like, you get, you can underbid.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, like you're saying,
somebody
like
else.
exactly with that. It's like some students are like, holy shit, I get to work on a Hollywood movie. What are you going to pay me? Who cares? I'm in. Like, and it's, I read that was a big problem as well, was that people were just like so amped on being a part of anything related to that they would just take whatever rates people would throw at them. And so, like, these established artists that have significantly more experience and are producing in the, above 80, like the higher echelons of quality are now all of a sudden like, I can underbid you by 50% and I'm only taking a 10% quality hit, like, or not, not to
it's
say
back,
that.
but see that model in particular, 2 studios in particular I've worked with have tried that, and it's failed, and they've had to go back.
Yeah.
When I was doing freelance for Rainmaker on Night at the Museum 2, their business model was at the time they had to hire a certain number of Canadian artists. And at the time, Canada just did not have an echelon of artists to do a feature film. So they were hiring students right out of Vancouver Film School. Their business model was to hire a couple of us Hollywood folk at good rate to play teacher.
Oh, geez.
That's so rough.
So my weekends were spent teaching. It was a horrible business model. It bit them in the ass. And then the other studio was ImageWorks, Sony ImageWorks, who's done the Spider-Man series, Beowulf, a bunch of movies. And they try to do the same thing. And soon after I left, and then Josh left not too long after, soon after Josh left, they hit a restructuring pattern where they decided to let everybody who was senior go and try that business model.
Oof, wow.
And that has not worked out well for them either. And they literally had to go back and start rehiring people they had fired to try to make up this difference of hiring so many students to do the work. At some point, that model fails.
Yeah.
And I'm scared what it's going to get to. And this even goes to India, who I don't think is yet, there are some very good Indian artists, mind you, has got to our level yet of people who've been in this for a while, where it's going to start backfiring, where studios at some point, which happens now, give these 9/11, they call them, shots, but instead of giving a studio a couple shots to do, they give whole sequences and say, we only have a month to fix this. Can you do this now? And then you watch the feature, and you can see a distinguishing at some point in the movie where it's clear the visual effects were done by somebody else. And this has happened on tons of movies, and it's getting worse. So I'm hoping at some point they find a happy medium and say, like, okay, we just got to, this is what our budget's going to be. We're going to spend the money. We want it to look nice because we're making $400 million on the back end on this, instead of going, well, let's just keep paying them less. We keep paying them less. It'll work out. It'll work out.
It's unsustainable in general, because you look at a place like India, it's like right now you can take advantage of an income inequality. But the more you're paying people in India to work on these films, 1, the better they're getting, so the more money they're going to want. And 2, there's just going to be an influx of money going into that country. And eventually, and it's on a long timeline, but on a long enough timeline, what's going to happen is India is going to become at more of an equality with the U.S., and then you've lost India. Now you
just go to North Korea.
But that's what I mean. Is you play that game enough times. It's basically
like a managing.
There's 192 countries in this goddamn world.
That's our manager.
But it's basically how they do.
Little known fact.
No, that's a very known fact. No. How many countries exist? Well known fact. Not a little known fact. But it reminds me of it's real estate in New York is the same way, where it's like Greenwich Village is the coolest place to live. And it's like, oh, it's cool because it's cheap and it's kind of dingy. And then they rent out all the fucking places in Greenwich Village. And now, well, no, Brooklyn's the coolest place to live. Then they run out of places in Brooklyn. Now Wall Street's the cool place to live. And it's just, it never works because they find a little place and then they exploit
But we don't have to worry about it. Our kids do, so fuck them.
No, but I mean, like, I think on a long enough timeline, it's a good thing.
Which is funny, which is what's happening in Canada right now. So the subsidy in Canada was the big first move, I'll call it. Besides for India, Canada was the next thing. Canada said, well, if you guys don't want to pay, then we'll more than happily to. So almost every studio, I think besides DreamWorks, even includes Pixar, have opened a sister studio, mostly in Vancouver. And Canada just recently, there's some articles out there, has started to say, yeah, we're going to take that away because they have them now. And they said, hey, we're going to take away the subsidy now.
Exactly.
Because, we hooked you up for a while.
Yeah, because now they can, right?
It is not cheap in Vancouver, which I find even more funny. So it's just like all of a sudden you've now created just a northern L.A., which Vancouver is filled now with all Hollywood artists, mind you. There's not many just straight up Canadians working up there. It's I don't know.
So
it's a weird business
does
model.
this stuff get passed on to like the consumer as like people are watching films and going, look, I noticed a significant quality difference in a movie that was half produced in India or half produced wherever. Like ultimately, it's the consumer base that's going to decide whether this business model is
Absolutely, that's
functional, and so
that's capitalism.
But like,
no, it's
like
the producers that are going to tell the user base what to care about.
No, truthfully, if people don't go see a visual effects movie where half of it was done elsewhere and it wasn't as good, then that'll speak volumes.
As a consumer,
why didn't Sharktopus hit the big screen?
Sharktopus?
Sharktopus.
Sharktopus.
Now that would be a great film too.
Hold on,
Sharktopus. Now all of us in here, maybe like B Flicks, are like, that was fucking awesome. It should. But I'm asking seriously, why didn't it?
Because it was terrible.
But could you argue that? Could you argue though that? Could you argue also that the visual effects were terrible?
Giant octopus versus mega shark.
Sharktopus.
No,
that's different.
Giant octopus that is merged with a giant shark.
So they have made it and now created one giant.
Let's even go with your
tentacle
film.
being.
I like it. What was bad about it? You could argue right off the bat. You're like, oh, the fucking cheesy visual effects are horrible. But even mom and dad can watch and go like, this is pretty cheesy. And not even because of the premise.
Had I seen that in the theater, I probably been like, what the? They just
you would have been like,
all
exactly.
of those shots.
Like, I just fucking spent what?
It's hard to do a drinking game.
You wouldn't do it again.
Whereas I would say like Sharktopus is probably just about as bad as like a Wrath of the Titans, but Wrath of the Titans has like a lot of more muscle behind it.
But like, here's the point. No, like
there's still a visual
giant
effects.
shark
Maybe
versus
that's
mega
to maybe an average person watching.
Mega
my mom would not watch
shark.
But we live in the hell out of Wrath of the Titans.
Right.
And we also live in L.A. Like, I think we're not the consumers.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be the jaded. I'm trying not to be
What I'm saying
jaded.
is, like, we notice stuff because we live
Well,
in
what
a
I'm
world
saying,
where
I
our
use-
friends and our family work on
correct,
these things.
but I
whereas
use-
you go to a place like the Midwest where they're just like, it's a movie. Like, Wrath of the Titans is like, cool, it's a movie. It's like there's not that distinction. There's not a lot of room for nuance. And so for them, to be quite honest, and not to say that they're stupider, they're just don't they don't look at it as close as we do because they don't do it for a living. For most people, I think it would be hard pressed to find a difference between a really good VFX movie and a good VFX movie. Not a really good and a like just garbage sci-fi movie.
But you could take the Sharktopus team to make, say, Return of the King. Watch it and the whole time going, what the fuck did I just watch? And
But I
not
think
because
that's
it's
the
so
thing, is
fucking
it's a
cool.
false-
And even your person in
Yeah.
Middle Earth, I'm
but-
calling it,
but that's
Kansas,
what I'm saying is
would say,
Well, obviously
what
someone
the
in Middle
fuck
Earth
did I
would
watch?
know exactly what it's like because they would see it every day.
But that's my point.
Fuck, Kearney.
I don't think giant shark, giant
Say
shark.
your movie. I like whatever movie
No,
you're
but
trying
I want
to
to
push
make
out.
sure I get
like
the
it.
right
Are you pitching a movie, Adam?
adjective.
Yes.
I want to make sure I
Can
get
we
the right
make this movie
adjective
together?
to the right animal. It's
Giant shark.
giant shark and mega octopus.
Gator.
Gatorade was a different Gatoroid.
It was
Gatorade.
Krakosaurus versus giant shark.
Crocosaurus.
Mega-
What's your
Okay,
Gator
I've actually
movie?
said a
Gator
real
Done.
movie.
Oh,
I don't know
Gator
where you're
Done.
going.
There's a Krakosaurus
Oh my
versus
god,
Mega
Kearney
Shark
has the
too.
best movie called Gator Done.
With Jamal White or Jaleel White from Steve Urkel. Steve Urkel's in it.
In what?
Jaleel?
What's he in?
Jaleel White.
Jameel?
What I was getting at some point
I don't
though,
know where I was going.
they
See
fall
in Gator
apart
Done?
so bad that even
Yeah.
mom and dad in Florida can go like that.
No,
okay,
no.
that's really
And-
bad.
And I think the biggest issue is that like there is a Hollywood perception about how movies get made, and it's completely false, right? It's like you want, and the Oscars are kind of a part of that, And I love the Oscars. Obviously, we've been watching since I was a kid. I think I said that 20 times already.
With your mom.
With my mom.
I heard you watch them with your mom.
With your family.
My family too. I repeat myself.
We know it's your mom now.
We
you don't have to say family anymore.
It's just me and my mom.
You and your mom watching
alone,
the Oscars.
watching the Oscars.
What
having a
does your
great time.
family think of the Grammys?
They hate the Grammys. 'Cause
Okay.
we don't like sound.
Grammys are the worst.
What about the CMAs?
But I think it's the thing where like
Ooh.
Are they big SB fans?
You look at the Oscars and you're like, oh, the director makes the movie, and I guess the producer does some bullshit thing, and like these actors are the only reason the movie exists. And there's and because that's a nice story, right? That like the director is in command of everything and like makes all the decisions, and then like the screenwriter writes the script, and we all know that like a screenplay gets rewritten and rewritten and rewritten. But like because we are here and we are all in like entertainment. But like I think there's just a big perception about like, oh well, a movie's made with like 10 people. Because it just makes a cleaner, tighter story, and I think that's a big problem. Because, like, I was watching the effects reel for the Avengers, and even me knowing what I know about how movies get made and how projects get made in the entertainment industry was surprised at how much work it took. And I was like, holy shit! I thought that was all in New York, and I thought it was all flying cameras. It's like, no, they built a city
Because directors are fucking lazy
But-
now.
Yeah,
But the
Fucking
thing is,
really
though,
lazy.
I mean, the Oscars exist the way they do because TMZ exists and Us Weekly exists. Like, Middle America doesn't give a fuck about how a movie's made. They care about Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio or all these famous people.
Yeah, because
part
they're
of
the
the
most
story.
visible part of
Exactly.
the story.
They don't say in Us Weekly like this director was, or this like unknown director or visual
They
effects
aren't
artist or somebody
usually
was doing.
in the
Like,
like they aren't like doing shit that's like fucking bonkers.
Well, but that's also they're not who you see when you go to the
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah.
it's all about who you see, which is
Unless
You know,
you're
and
Ben
who
Affleck.
you connect with
Except for
in
Ben
the
Affleck.
story.
yeah, exactly.
But I do think that what's really, in my opinion, I could be completely wrong, what's really going to kill all this is going to be that India eventually is going to be good enough that they're going to require the same amount of money that the U.S. requires, and it's just going to, like, oh, I guess we need to move somewhere else. And
Enter
that,
And they will
China.
move somewhere.
And they will-
That's
they
the
definitely
thing is
will
they're
move
going to move
somewhere
somewhere else.
Yeah.
And here's the funny on that
92 countries, I heard.
on that note, and Josh, back me up here. So our friend Matt took a job at Lucas in Singapore. Now I had no idea. Now when you tell me anywhere
mean
outside of the
Disney.
States, I'm sorry,
Right. Now.
Disney Lucas Singapore, DLS, Dunkus. No, for me, outside of a couple of the other places I know are kind of expensive to live. If you take a gig in London, Vancouver, Singapore, I guess, is super expensive to live. It's all expats with lots of money, and I didn't know this. So he takes this job. I'm like, dude, you're gonna be balling. Outside of he loves Asian girls, little Jewish man loves Asian girls. Literally, we all clowned him right away. We were like, "You're going to love going there." He's like, "Yeah."
And they love him.
They love him there.
specifically Matt Eulis.
I know.
He gets there. He's like, no. He's like, no. And he's like, no. It's like me and like 4 roommates. I'm like, hold up. So you left your nice place here in Culver City, in expensive LA.
Yeah.
I think we all could agree it's expensive
Oh, yeah,
here.
yeah.
To go to Singapore, where you have to have roommates because the rent's so much.
That's crazy.
I'm like, who's saving money where exactly to have
Yeah.
Lucas Singapore? Like, where's the savings?
So, Sean, you were mentioning that one day India is going to catch up, right? Like, as the Indian artists get better, they're going to demand more money. The moment they demand more money, they will be kicked to the curb and they'll grab someone out of the slums and teach them how to do the job for 10 grand.
No, but what I'm saying is that what's going to happen, and I'm not saying that this is right, but the positive side effect to this is that there's going to be an influx of cash into India where there wasn't before. And so it's not necessarily just going to be the fact that the people working on the movies are going to get more talented, but that the country itself is going to be more wealthy. And so you have a third world country become a second world country, and now rates in general for just cost of living, for what people expect, go up. And now they can't go to the slums and pull somebody for $1 a day. Now, granted, it might have gone to $5 a day, but it's going to slowly but surely move up. And what you're going to have, and this is like, let's say our planet exists for another 1,000 years, you're gonna run out of places eventually. Is what I'm saying.
300
That
I think.
I give it
I guess my
1,000?
point is,
Who
while,
knows?
while,
Meteors.
while you're probably accurate, I think you would have to exhaust the population of India for that to happen. Like, even if there's more wealth coming, there's still such a huge divide between the educated wealthy and the poor.
Yeah, India's not the best
but
example.
The business owners, though, are not. They're not dependent on, hey, we're going to get this person because they're good at their job.
We're
That
there
is-
for one reason.
That is
period.
not
That I
India's power.
No,
Their power is
totally.
cheap labor. So
But
they
that's
will
what I'm saying.
find that
You're going to run
anywhere.
out of cheap labor because, in the same way that they could theoretically, they could find cheap labor in the U.S., but they can't find. You can find like shitty people who will work. I mean, we got a big unemployment rate. You could find cheap labor here,
But we have a
you
minimum
go to
wage.
India because because of those things that I think.
wonder-
will be, look at China.
I
for
wonder if
example.
it could happen
but
earlier.
I also think that like you make that statement with the assumption that their culture is exactly like ours, which is not true. Like my in-laws are from Taiwan, and they have very strong opinions about China, to be sure. But what's interesting about them and having gone over there is the culture is so different in ways that you can't even imagine. I mean, there was that whole Mike Carey story about the apple plants that ended up turning out to be partially made up by him. Where there was the big soundbite was that oh well, at the apple plants they have nets to catch people because they want to commit suicide. And we all responded to that in the Western culture oh my God, that's terrible. Their working conditions must be so bad that they have to throw themselves out and they have to catch these people from killing themselves. And their response, my in-laws from Taiwan was, well, yeah, they have to have nets because people are trying to kill themselves.
Like it was a good thing the nets were there.
I was like, of course they have to have nets. It was just
you can't just let people fall to the ground.
You can't just let people fall to the ground. And that is such a fundamental difference. Is we look at that with such atrocity, even on both sides of the political spectrum. I can't believe that they would be driven to that, and they look at it like it's well, yeah, we have to do this because people are jumping out the fucking window.
But the thing is when you look at China,
so it's like they're competing at a level we can never match.
But we
because our
moved
cultures
from
are so
China.
different.
But the thing, the I get that, but the problem with that is that we've moved from China to India because we've raised the economic, we've raised the economy of China by exporting things and by importing jobs basically, or exporting jobs.
Yeah.
Sorry. And so, but the thing is you look at China and you see when they came down to what was really going on with Apple, when they asked Tim Cook, why can't you just move all these jobs to the U.S.? The problem isn't the workers making the money. The problem is that right now in China, all the parts, where they manufacture the parts, are all really close to each other. And that becomes the real big issue is that the guy who makes the little fucking microprocessor is 2 steps away from the guy who makes the little motherboard that you solder that onto, and that they don't have that sort of distance, and that by shipping things and traveling things, that's really what the money comes down to. And that's what I'm saying is that you eventually are going to grow the country that, yes, there are going to be cultural differences and there are going to be things, but you're going to grow the country enough that you just can't exploit that cheap of labor anymore because there's just those jobs aren't going to be there as much.
There's obviously more to this story too that we're not hitting on because there's looking at China and India, manufacturing China, and a lot of software engineering, white collar jobs, graphic stuff going to India. So there's clearly more to the puzzle there. Maybe India's population is actually not just cheap labor, but it's cheap labor with high education rate, whereas that doesn't exist in China. Maybe China is just plain cheap labor, where Indian is both. There's more to the puzzle there, and I'm not quite sure exactly what it is. But clearly, there's a reason. China is not getting big lucrative animation contract deals. There are some in process in places.
Well,
some
and in the video game industry as well. I read on Twitter that a lot you're seeing
Twitter?
a lot more Chinese names in the
He's
credits of
tweeting
games
out
because that is where they're outsourcing a lot of the
I'm just going to start putting random
too.
information on
So
Twitter
I
and see
think-
if Jay picks it up.
He's
Yeah,
did you know
I
that
only
the average
follow,
human
like,
uses
4
3
people.
rolls of toilet paper in one day? I read it on Twitter.
But the good news is, Jay, is that you've moved up because he used to only reference Snapple facts.
Yeah.
So at least
So we're
finally
moving
he got a
up.
smartphone.
Did you know
Moving up.
beavers used to be the
It's
size
good.
of bears? That's a Snapple fact for real.
But I do think it's a risk when you just look at, there's been a lot of talk recently about the U.S. declining as a superpower and China becoming a superpower. And I think that when you look at things like that, you go well, we fucking created a lot of that shit for ourselves, didn't we, guys? Because we boosted them up as big as we could by spending a shitload of our money with them, but also by raising their median income by just going over there and going hey, we've got these jobs that you'll do, at first it was you'll do remarkably cheaper than Americans, then you'll do a little bit cheaper than Americans. It's I just think that it's unsustainable in the long run. It's a long burn, but I think it's unsustainable.
I just think the Will Ferrell, Zach Galifianakis movie, The Campaign, really nailed it on the head, where they brought China to America and let China have a section of like Middle America that they called their own, so that all the transport costs is really cheap in just one area.
That movie Step Brothers really nailed it on the head too about sibling rivalry.
Are you being 100% serious? I will watch that movie now. I missed that movie because I thought there was nothing going on.
We joke about Will Ferrell as a cutting edge, like humanitarian and speaking out on really
never said that.
That's never been joked about.
No one has
Twitter does that sometimes.
Jay, well, hold on, Jay. Can you
confirm? What have you seen on Twitter?
Fuck. All right, I'm out.
What does the Twitterverse say about that?
Unconfirmed.
I have to be honest. If it even remotely, and Jason touched on this as much as he said, is the second that happened, they grabbed somebody on the street. If it even remotely started to go that route, we would not be there. Period. We just would not. The only reason we are there because. The schooling for at least what we do right now in visual effects is just in the last 10 years started to get, or 5 years started to get up to a speed where they're teaching people, and they still have to come here to learn from us, even on DreamWorks side, to do stuff. If they all of a sudden said, you know what, we're going to do a minimum wage, we're all thinking $20-25 an hour, we're like, you know what, good for you guys. We're I hope that works out for you. DreamWorks back to LA. We're going to find the next country to work with. We just won't be there.
Or if they
and the countries we're in,
whatever,
kind of know
the
that.
government gets overthrown.
So there, with all this visual effects talk, there are still movies out there that are successful with no visual effects.
Which ones?
The Oreo Separator.
Is that a movie?
It's a YouTube
Which
short
ones
film.
That was even a weird lead-in.
It is a YouTube
That was a
short
nice
film.
seg.
Thank
I know.
you. I've been practicing.
I would call it waiting.
I would argue his YouTube video was color corrected.
I got some family.
All I can tell you is that
didn't he have to use a computer to like upload it to YouTube?
having watched that,
It's not a visual effect.
having watched that with audio, I so appreciate editing. Like there are moments that come along where you're like, what does an editor do again? Like, oh yeah, no.
Cuts out all the bullshit.
That is what an editor does. An editor takes this guy that you're not sure if it's a joke or not and makes you think that it's serious and yet not at the exact
And you
same
have to watch it with audio to
Yes.
know that it's a joke because
you
I
see
thought
his
it was just an
mustache and
interesting
you're like,
video.
oh, that's funny, but then you're like, holy shit, guy.
Well, you
I
can
thought
watch.
it was the Unibot.
You can watch the cut. There was a couple years ago where everybody. It looked like it was coming out of school where everybody was recutting trailers for movies, and the best one is the comedy, The Shining, with Jack Nicholson.
Oh, yeah.
And at the very end, it's just Shining. Yeah. It's just that whole.
It's like
bit.
a father-son like.
Oh, it's a
romantic comedy.
With like
It's awesome.
Salisbury Hill.
It's awesome.
and
Salisbury Hill.
It's the epitome of what an editor can do with just some sound and just
hilarious.
clips.
Wasn't that part of like a competition?
Yeah, there
I
was a
think there's, like, an
long
annual
stretch of
competition
like
that they
people
have,
just
yeah.
doing
It was a
They always use
competition
that
that was just me, and I gave it number one. It won an
Yeah,
Oscar.
it won a
Personal
a
competition.
The Oreo
Oscar.
splitting YouTube?
No, not
It won
that.
an Oscar.
The Salisbury
He
Hill
used a freaking
show.
hatchet and a Dremel. Like, who has ever thought like I love Oreos, fucking hate that cream bullshit in the middle? Like, I hate that. What I'm going to use is a hatchet and dental floss and a goddamn Dremel.
I don't think he was trying to get the cream out.
That's
It was-
Yes,
No,
that's
you have to
exactly
listen to
what
the
he
audio. That
is.
was his mission.
He's
That
like,
was
I
his-
love
he hated
Oreos.
cream.
I
Okay,
hate
so watch it without
the
audio.
cream.
Pecco
Why
missed the
doesn't he just buy a
subtext.
chocolate wafer?
Pecco was too busy.
I thought he was
busy
just trying to
checking
split
Twitter.
Oreos.
No,
Yeah.
he literally does not like.
See, I would outsource to
That was the
India
whole
for
machine.
this.
He's
and
like, if
I'd
I
be-
can. He
seriously,
literally
much
goes,
cheaper than the
he
Adreno
literally
board.
goes, like, you probably could
Two
hire-
Indian kids, they love it. They
If it
eat
was
the
your
cream
way,
all day long.
if it was your way, there'd be
You
no,
could
there'd be
hire
no
a
cream.
Mexican
There'd
at
be no
Home
cream. There'd be no
Depot
hatchet
for
even.
cheaper.
That'd be
You could have
Vincent
gone to
VFX.
Home Depot and been like, hey,
I'll be a
Mexican,
blue sex
for $10 an
slave.
hour.
Dude, zing and zang. They
Split.
sit, they lick it off.
By the way, if you ever go to
Zing
Home
and
Depot
zang,
with
and
a
we
pickup
can't
all I
make
have,
Jew jokes,
Liz.
is that right?
That's all I have.
He
Say
can
that.
say
I said
zing and
no.
zang about Chinese people.
If you ever go,
I didn't say specifically who I was
I
talking
think you
about.
said China.
if you ever go to Home Depot with a pickup truck,
They're
and
from
yell
Kentucky, they're-
Trabajo and then drive off real quickly.
They'll run
You're
after
probably a
That's
racist.
It's
mean.
funny.
You're probably like a fucking
That's so
terrible
mean.
racist.
You're an asshole. No, you're just an asshole.
Let me just,
Yeah.
let me just like.
Sure, you're getting
What does
so
that
many
mean?
people-
You're a
That-
racist.
You're a complete
No,
racist.
You're not racist. You're going up to a
giving
homeless guy and
people's
going like,
hopes up that they're going to eat a full dinner tonight.
yeah, you're
That's-
like,
that's-
oh,
that's-
and
They
now
could put
they
like
will
a
not.
string on a
Yeah.
dollar
you're
bill and
hungry
just,
today.
like,
You know,
I've got
1/4
this
of my
huge
family
thing of
comes
food
from
I'm
Boston.
I'm not even laughing
Exactly.
anymore.
It's
I'm crying.
hilarious.
If Vincent wasn't Indian, he'd be offended by that.
Vincent, are you Indian?
No, I'm
kind
Mexican.
of something.
I just
Some
like
kind of
Indian.
something.
I don't think it comes across in the audio. Though.
Video. Look at
Oh, there is
the
video. There's a little camera over
That's a
there.
camera.
Oh, okay, very cool.
Yeah, I'm not on video right now.
That's cool because the camera could pick me pick up me evilly rubbing my hands together whenever India gets mentioned. Like, yes, we'll get all your visual
It'll be
effects.
mine.
We'll do it for cheaper. Yeah, we'll
Come
find
to
any
take them
scum on the street. That's how we'll do it. We'll go to Home Depot. Tons of Indian people standing outside of there.
That's actually my current business model for a visual effects house.
Yeah. Get in the back, guys.
Where are you getting your work? You don't get it. I can get new guys every day.
Maya, Max. All right. Mental Ray.
grab 'em.
Anybody?
You guys know it? No? Perfect. You're in.
You rig, and the plumbing.
Well, I think on that note, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Nerdtastic in 3D, episode number 53. My name is Jason Carter.
I'm Jack Geckler.
Jason Pecco.
Josh the Brat.
Liz Heron.
Sean Fennell.
Vincent Perea.
Jason Pecco.
Adam McFarland.
And for those of you counting at home, that was 9 people today.
Is that a record?
Two of them were
sharing
Jason.
microphones.
That was big.
That's the most we've
Is
ever
that
had.
our
at a
record?
show.
Yeah. Is that your record?
I can't
Well,
remember.
we had the 2 guys from the Vault.
Yeah. 10.
3? I wasn't there for one of those, so that evened out.
Good times. So thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Nerdtastic in 3D.